In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of Earth's most powerful telescopes, there existed a species known as the Zarnok. These creatures were unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Their bodies were covered in thick, metallic exoskeletons that shimmered like polished steel under the light of alien suns. Their eyes glowed with an eerie green hue, and their razor-sharp claws could slice through steel as easily as paper. But what truly made them terrifying was not their physical strength or appearance, it was their hive-like intelligence. Every Zarnok was connected to a collective consciousness, allowing them to think and act as one unstoppable force. For centuries, the Zarnok had roamed the stars, conquering planet after planet. They left behind only barren wastelands, their former inhabitants wiped out without mercy. Entire civilizations fell before them, unable to withstand their relentless onslaught. The Zarnok did not negotiate. They did not show compassion. To them, other species were nothing more than obstacles to be eliminated. Among their kind, one name stood above all others: Kalith. As the leader of the Zarnok, Kalith was revered as the greatest strategist their race had ever produced. Under his command, no world had ever resisted for long. But despite their reputation as the galaxy's most lethal species, the Zarnok had never encountered humans. And on Earth, life went on as usual, completely unaware of the danger lurking in the depths of space. In Chicago, Illinois, Jack Miller woke up early one morning to the sound of rain tapping against his apartment window. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-30s, Jack had calloused hands from years of working as a mechanic. He wasn't rich, but he didn't need much. Just enough to keep food on the table and take care of his younger sister, Emma. She lived just a few blocks away and worked at the local library, surrounded by books she loved more than almost anything else. That day started like any other. Jack grabbed a cup of coffee and headed to his garage, where he spent hours fixing cars for customers who often complained about the bill, but always came back because he did good work. Meanwhile, Emma sorted through shelves of dusty novels, humming softly to herself as she shelved returns. Neither of them knew it yet, but this ordinary day would mark the beginning of something extraordinary and horrifying. Far above Earth, invisible to the naked eye, a fleet of Zarnok ships approached. These massive vessels floated silently through the void, their sleek, jagged designs resembling predatory beasts ready to strike. Inside the flagship, Kalith stood in the command center, his glowing eyes scanning the holographic projection of the blue-green planet below. His subordinates buzzed around him, awaiting orders. "This world is primitive," Kalith said in a voice that resonated like grinding metal. "Their technology is laughable. We will crush them quickly." The invasion began without warning. At first, people noticed strange lights in the sky, bright flashes that streaked across the horizon faster than lightning. Then came the explosions. Cities around the globe erupted into chaos as the Zarnok unleashed devastating orbital bombardments. Buildings crumbled into rubble, fires raged uncontrollably, and millions died within minutes. Panic spread like wildfire as survivors fled in every direction, searching for safety that no longer existed. Jack was in the middle of repairing a car when the attack hit Chicago. The ground shook violently, throwing tools off the workbench and sending sparks flying. He stumbled outside, shielding his eyes from the blinding light of a nearby explosion. Smoke filled the air and screams echoed through the streets. People ran in terror, some clutching children, others dragging wounded friends. Jack's heart raced as he realized what was happening. An alien invasion straight out of a science fiction movie. Only this wasn't fiction. It was real. His first thought was for Emma. He grabbed his phone and tried calling her, but the lines were dead. Frantically, he jumped into his truck and sped toward the library, dodging debris and abandoned vehicles along the way. When he arrived, the building was engulfed in flames. Jack shouted her name, tears streaming down his face as he searched for any sign of her. But there was nothing, no trace of his sister anywhere. As night fell, the full scope of the devastation became clear. The Zarnok had targeted major cities worldwide, leaving billions dead or displaced. Governments struggled to respond, but their weapons proved useless against the invaders' advanced technology. Fighter jets were shot down before they could even get close, and tanks were reduced to smoldering wrecks by energy beams that sliced through armor like butter. For the first time in history, humanity faced an enemy it couldn't fight. Amidst the ruins, small groups of survivors began to band together. Jack found himself among them, drawn to a woman named Sarah Bennett. A former soldier with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude, Sarah had seen combat before and knew how to survive. She took charge of organizing the group, teaching them basic survival skills and helping them scavenge for supplies. Together, they fortified an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, turning it into a makeshift shelter. Despite the horrors unfolding around them, Jack refused to give up hope. He spent his days repairing whatever equipment they could find, using his mechanical expertise to create crude weapons capable of harming the Zarnok. It wasn't much, but it gave the survivors a fighting chance. At night, he lay awake thinking about Emma, praying she was still alive somewhere. He promised himself he wouldn't stop looking until he found her, or until there was nothing left to look for. Meanwhile, deep underground, scientists worked tirelessly to understand the invaders. Dr. Rachel Morgan, a brilliant astrophysicist, led a team of researchers analyzing fragments of Zarnok technology recovered from battlefields. Her lab was dimly lit, powered by generators scavenged from nearby ruins. Around her, assistants buzzed with nervous energy, knowing that failure meant extinction. One of them, a young engineer named Brian Carter, caught her attention with his quick thinking and innovative ideas. Brian had always been fascinated by machines, and now he poured all his knowledge into reverse engineering the alien tech. After days of sleepless effort, he made a breakthrough. The Zarnok relied heavily on electromagnetic pulses to disable enemy defenses, a tactic that rendered most human weapons useless. Armed with this information, Dr. Morgan devised a plan to develop EMP-resistant shielding. If they could protect their forces from the pulses, humanity might stand a chance. Back on the surface, the resistance grew stronger. Survivors from different parts of the city joined forces, sharing resources and strategies. They learned to avoid open areas where Zarnok drones patrolled and struck back with guerrilla tactics. Small victories boosted morale, proving that the invaders weren't invincible. Each successful ambush fueled their determination to fight back, but the cost of resistance was high. Friends and family members were lost in skirmishes, and the constant threat of discovery kept everyone on edge. Yet even in the darkest moments, a spark of defiance burned brightly. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout its history: wars, plagues, natural disasters, and somehow, it had always endured. This time would be no different. As the days turned into weeks, rumors spread of a hidden rebel network operating beneath the surface. Some claimed it was led by a mysterious figure known only as the Librarian, someone with insider knowledge of the Zarnok's plans. Jack wondered if Emma might be involved. Could she have survived the initial attack and joined the resistance? He clung to the possibility, letting it drive him forward. Unbeknownst to the survivors, the Zarnok were growing frustrated. Calith had expected Earth to fall quickly, like every other planet they had conquered. But humanity's resilience surprised him. These fragile beings refused to surrender, even when faced with overwhelming odds. It was a puzzling development, one that demanded a change in strategy. Calith ordered his forces to escalate their attacks, targeting key infrastructure to cripple humanity's ability to resist. Yet despite the mounting pressure, humanity's spirit remained unbroken. In basements and bunkers, in forests and deserts, people fought back with everything they had. They adapted, innovated, and persevered. And though the outcome of the war was still uncertain, one thing was clear. The Zarnok had underestimated their newest adversary. Humans were not just prey. They were predators driven by a fierce will to survive. Little did the Zarnok know, their reign as the galaxy's most lethal species was about to be challenged in ways they could never have anticipated. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of Earth's situation became painfully clear. The Zarnok were not just invaders, they were exterminators. Their attacks showed no mercy, no hesitation. Cities that had once thrived with life were now reduced to smoldering ruins. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the cries of survivors echoed through the streets. Humanity was on the brink of collapse, but even in the face of overwhelming despair, people refused to give up. Jack Miller found himself at the center of this struggle. After losing his sister Emma during the initial attack, he had thrown himself into the fight against the Zarnok. His mechanical skills made him invaluable to the resistance. He spent long hours in the dimly lit warehouse where the group had taken shelter, repairing broken tools, modifying vehicles, and crafting crude weapons from whatever scraps they could scavenge. Jack wasn't a soldier by training, but he had a natural talent for problem solving. If something needed fixing or improving, he was the one everyone turned to. Sarah Bennett, the former soldier who had taken charge of the group, quickly became Jack's closest ally. She was tough, pragmatic, and unyielding, a born leader who inspired confidence in those around her. Sarah organized patrols, coordinated supply runs, and devised strategies to outmaneuver the Zarnok. Her calm demeanor under pressure earned her the trust of the survivors, many of whom looked to her for guidance. Despite their differences, Jack's quiet determination versus Sarah's bold decisiveness, they worked well together, forming a partnership that kept the group alive. The Zarnok, however, were relentless. Patrols of insectoid drones swept through the city, hunting down anyone who dared to resist. These smaller units were fast and agile, equipped with sharp claws and energy weapons that could cut through walls. They scoured every corner of the ruins, leaving destruction in their wake. Survivors learned to stay hidden, moving only under the cover of darkness. Even then, danger lurked everywhere. Traps set by the Zarnok, ambushes in narrow alleyways, and the ever-present threat of orbital bombardments. One night, while Jack and Sarah led a small team on a supply run, they stumbled upon a horrifying sight. A group of civilians had been caught trying to flee the city. The Zarnok had surrounded them, herding them into a tight circle before slaughtering them without hesitation. The scene was gruesome, the ground slick with blood and littered with bodies. Jack clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. It was moments like these that reminded him why they couldn't afford to lose. "We have to stop them," he muttered to Sarah as they crouched behind a pile of rubble. "If we don't, they'll keep doing this until there's nothing left." Sarah nodded grimly. "We will," she said. "But we can't take them head on. We need to be smarter, faster." She glanced at the rest of the team, her expression hardening. "Let's grab what we came for and get out of here. This place isn't safe anymore." Back at the warehouse, tensions ran high. Supplies were running low, and morale was shaky. Many of the survivors were injured, sick, or exhausted from constant fear. Some questioned whether it was worth continuing the fight. What chance did a handful of humans have against an entire alien army? But Sarah refused to let doubt take hold. She gathered everyone in the main room, standing tall despite the weariness etched into her face. "I know things look bad," she began, her voice steady, "but giving up isn't an option. Every day we survive is a victory. Every drone we destroy is a step toward taking our planet back." Her words struck a chord. Slowly, the group began to rally, finding strength in each other. They started working together more effectively, pooling their resources and skills. One man, a retired electrician named Harold, rigged up makeshift alarms to warn them of approaching Zarnok patrols. A young woman named Lisa, who had been a nurse before the invasion, tended to the wounded with whatever medical supplies they could find. Even children pitched in, helping sort food and water rations. Meanwhile, far away from the chaos of the cities, Dr. Rachel Morgan and her team of scientists continued their desperate efforts to understand the Zarnok. Their underground lab was cramped and poorly lit, but it buzzed with activity. Brian Carter, the young engineer, had become Rachel's right hand, his enthusiasm infectious despite the grim circumstances. Together they pored over fragments of alien technology, piecing together how it worked and searching for weaknesses. Progress was slow, But eventually, they made a breakthrough. Brian discovered that the Zarnok's energy weapons operated on a specific frequency, one that could potentially be disrupted. If they could develop a device to interfere with that frequency, they might render the weapons useless, at least temporarily. Rachel immediately set to work designing such a device, using salvaged parts and improvising where necessary. It was risky and success was far from guaranteed, but it was the best hope they had. Word of their efforts spread among the resistance, sparking cautious optimism. Jack heard about it during one of their nightly meetings. "If this works," he said, his eyes lighting up, "we might actually stand a chance." Sarah agreed, though she warned against getting too hopeful. "It's a start," she said, "but we still need to stay smart. No matter what happens, the Zarnok aren't going to go down easy." As the resistance grew stronger, so did their tactics. Sarah devised hit-and-run missions designed to harass the Zarnok without engaging them directly, so small teams would strike quickly, targeting supply depots, communication arrays, and patrol routes. Then they would vanish into the shadows before reinforcements arrived. These guerrilla tactics proved surprisingly effective, forcing the Zarnok to divert resources to protect their assets. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity seemed to be gaining ground. But the victories came at a cost. Each mission carried the risk of discovery, and not everyone returned. Jack lost friends along the way, people who had fought beside him, shared meals with him, and trusted him to lead them safely home. Each loss weighed heavily on him, but he buried his grief and pressed on. He knew that stopping meant surrendering, and surrendering meant death, for himself, for Sarah, and for everyone else still clinging to hope. Amidst the fighting, rumors began circulating about a mysterious figure known as the Librarian. According to whispers, this person had insider knowledge of the Zarnok's plans and was leading a secret network of rebels operating beneath the surface. Some claimed the Librarian had access to advanced alien tech, while others believed they had ties to Earth's military. Whoever they were, their influence was undeniable. Resistance cells across the country reported receiving encrypted messages containing valuable intelligence, maps of Zarnok strongholds, details of upcoming attacks, and instructions for building countermeasures. Jack wondered if Emma might be involved. Could she have survived the initial assault and joined this underground movement? The thought kept him going, fueling his determination to push harder, fight longer. He asked around, hoping someone might recognize her name or description, but no one had seen her. Still, he refused to give up hope. If anyone could survive in a world gone mad, it was Emma. Unbeknownst to the resistance, Kalith, the Zarnok leader, was growing increasingly frustrated. In all his centuries of conquest, he had never encountered a species as stubborn as humans. They should have been crushed within days, yet here they were, striking back with surprising ferocity. Reports poured in daily of ambushes, sabotages, and stolen supplies. It was infuriating and unacceptable. Kalith summoned his top commanders to the flagship's command center. The room hummed with the faint vibration of machinery, and holographic displays flickered above the table. "This planet is proving more troublesome than anticipated," he said, his voice cold and metallic. "Humans are weaker than most species we've encountered, yet they refuse to submit." "Why?" One of the commanders hesitated before answering. "They adapt quickly, my lord. Their primitive weapons are ineffective, but they modify them to compensate. And their unpredictability makes them difficult to counter." Kalith's glowing eyes narrowed. "Adaptation and unpredictability are traits of prey, not predators. Yet these humans act as though they are hunters. This must end. Increase the frequency of orbital bombardments. Target their remaining infrastructure. Leave them nothing to rebuild with." The order was carried out swiftly. Over the next few days, the Zarnok intensified their attacks, raining destruction down on Earth. With terrifying precision, power grids failed, water supplies dried up, and communication networks collapsed. The resistance struggled to adapt, their movements hampered by the constant threat of annihilation. Morale plummeted as survivors realized the full extent of the enemy's power. But even in the darkest moments, humanity's resilience shone through. Jack and Sarah adjusted their strategies, focusing on smaller, more covert operations that minimized risk. They taught the group how to live off the land, scavenging for food and water in abandoned buildings and untended fields. They encouraged creativity, rewarding those who came up with innovative solutions to problems. Slowly but surely, the resistance adapted, finding new ways to survive and fight back. The victory at the Zarnok Communications Hub gave the resistance a much-needed boost. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had struck a meaningful blow against their alien oppressors. The outpost's destruction disrupted the invaders' ability to coordinate attacks in the region, giving survivors a brief reprieve from the relentless assaults. But Jack and Sarah both knew this was only a small step. The Zarnok were still overwhelmingly powerful, and their retaliation would come swiftly and brutally. Back at the warehouse, the group celebrated cautiously. They shared meager rations of canned food and stale bread, laughing and joking as if they hadn't just risked their lives hours earlier. Jack sat quietly in a corner, cleaning his rifle while listening to the others talk. Despite the celebration, his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the image of the Zarnok drones falling back, their weapons rendered useless by Rachel's prototype device. It had worked, better than anyone expected, but it wasn't enough. One weapon wouldn't turn the tide of an entire war. They needed more. Better tools, stronger tactics, and most importantly, unity among the scattered resistance cells across the globe. Sarah noticed Jack's silence and walked over to him. "You're thinking too hard," she said, leaning against the wall beside him. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a mix of concern and determination. "We did good tonight. That outpost won't be calling in reinforcements any time. Soon." Jack nodded, setting down the rifle. "I know, but it's not enough. We hit them once, sure, but they'll adapt, they always do. And next time, they'll come harder." Sarah sighed, running a hand through her short, dark hair. "You're right, but we've got something they don't. People who refuse to quit. That's why we're still here." She paused, looking around at the group. "We need to keep pushing. Hit them where it hurts, make them bleed. If we can get more of those devices out there, maybe we can even things up a little." Jack agreed, though he didn't say so out loud. Instead, he asked, "What about the other resistance groups? Have we heard anything from them?" Sarah shook her head. "Not recently. Communication is still spotty. But if the rumors are true, there's a network operating underground. Someone's pulling strings behind the scenes. Maybe this librarian person everyone keeps talking about." Jack frowned. The librarian. He'd heard the name before, whispered in hushed tones by survivors. Some claimed the librarian was a master strategist, someone with inside knowledge of the Zarnok's plans. Others believed it was a code name for a larger organization. Whoever or whatever they were, they seemed to be helping the resistance survive. Jack wondered again if Emma might be involved. Could she have found her way into this shadowy network? The thought kept him awake at night, torn between hope and fear. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface, Dr. Rachel Morgan and Brian Carter worked tirelessly to replicate the prototype weapon. News of its success had spread quickly, and requests for more poured in from resistance fighters desperate for any advantage. Rachel and her team labored day and night, scavenging parts from abandoned factories, wrecked vehicles, and even Zarnok debris. Each new device took hours to assemble, and the process was far from perfect. Some prototypes failed entirely, exploding in bursts of sparks or emitting strange noises that attracted unwanted attention. But slowly, they improved, refining the design until it became reliable enough for widespread use. Brian, despite his exhaustion, couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride every time a new device passed testing. "This could change everything," he said one evening, holding up a finished unit. Its blue light pulsed softly, casting faint shadows on the walls of the lab. "If we can get these into the hands of enough people—" Rachel cut him off, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Don't get ahead of yourself. These weapons are useful, but they're not miracle cures. The Zarnok are still stronger, faster, and better equipped. This gives us a chance, but it doesn't guarantee victory. Brian nodded, sobered by her words. Yeah, I know. Still, it's something, and something is better than nothing. As the days passed, the resistance grew bolder. Armed with the new devices, they launched coordinated attacks on Zarnok supply lines, targeting convoys carrying food, fuel, and ammunition. The aliens, caught off guard by the sudden surge in human aggression, struggled to respond. Their energy weapons faltered under the interference of Rachel's technology, forcing them to rely on brute strength instead. But humans were cunning, using the terrain to their advantage and striking quickly before retreating into the shadows. Jack and Sarah led several of these missions, their partnership growing stronger with each success. Jack's mechanical skills proved invaluable, allowing him to modify vehicles and traps to maximize their effectiveness. Sarah's tactical expertise ensured that every operation was carefully planned and executed. Together, they inspired confidence in their team, earning the trust of even the most skeptical survivors. But the Zarnok weren't idle. Under Kaleith's command, they regrouped and adapted. Realizing that humans were exploiting weaknesses in their technology, the invaders began deploying new types of drones. Larger, heavily armored units designed to withstand electromagnetic interference. These behemoths lumbered through the ruins, crushing anything in their path. Worse still, they carried payloads of explosive charges capable of leveling entire city blocks. When the resistance encountered these new threats, the cost was high. A daring raid on a Zarnok munitions depot ended in disaster when one of the armored drones detonated its payload, killing half the team and wounding many others. Jack barely escaped with his life, dragging an injured comrade to safety as flames engulfed the area behind them. Back at the warehouse, Lisa worked frantically to treat the wounded, her hands trembling as she stitched wounds and applied makeshift bandages. The mood was somber, the weight of loss hanging heavy in the air. "We can't keep doing this," one of the survivors muttered bitterly. "They're too strong. Every time we think we've got them figured out, they come back harder." Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fatigue etched into her face. "We don't have a choice. Giving up means letting them win. Is that what you want? To roll over and die because it's easier?" The man looked away, shamefaced, but said nothing. Sarah turned to the rest of the group, her expression softening slightly. "I know it's hard. Believe me, I know. But we've come too far to stop now. Every drone we destroy, every convoy we ambush, it matters. It shows them that we're still here, still fighting." Her words resonated, lifting spirits just enough to keep the group moving forward. Over the next few days, they focused on rebuilding, reinforcing their defenses and preparing for the next fight. Jack spent hours tinkering with the modified vehicles, adding extra armor plating and upgrading the engines. Harold, the retired electrician, rigged up additional alarms and traps around the warehouse, ensuring they'd have some warning if the Zarnok came knocking. Amidst the chaos, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One evening, a stranger arrived at the warehouse, battered and exhausted but alive. His name was Marcus Reed, and he claimed to be part of the underground network led by the mysterious librarian. According to Marcus, the librarian had been monitoring the Resistance's activities and wanted to offer assistance. "We've got resources you might find useful," he said, his voice hoarse from lack of water. "Weapons, intel, safe houses. But we need your help too." Jack listened intently, his heart racing. "Do you know where my sister is?" he asked, abruptly. "Her name's Emma. She was at the library when the attack happened." Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. "Sorry, I don't have that kind of info. But if she's alive and part of the network, I'll see what I can find out." It wasn't much, but it was enough to reignite Jack's hope. He agreed to meet with the librarian, hoping it would lead him closer to finding Emma. Sarah, however, was cautious. "We don't know who this guy really is," she warned later, after Marcus had gone to rest. "For all we know, he could be a spy." "I don't think so," Jack replied. "He's scared, same as us. And if he's telling the truth, we can't afford to ignore it." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed to accompany Jack on the journey to meet the librarian. The following morning, they set out with Marcus as their guide, leaving the warehouse in the hands of trusted members of the group. The trip was perilous, taking them through areas still crawling with Zarnok patrols. At one point, they narrowly avoided detection by hiding in the ruins of an old subway station, holding their breath as drones clattered overhead. Finally, after 2 tense days of travel, they reached their destination, a sprawling bunker hidden beneath a collapsed highway. Inside, they were greeted by a woman who introduced herself simply as the librarian. She was younger than Jack had expected, with sharp features and piercing eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Around her neck hung a pendant shaped like an open book, its pages engraved with symbols Jack didn't recognize. "You've done well," the librarian said, gesturing for them to sit. "Your actions have inspired others to join the fight. But we need more than inspiration, we need coordination. The Zarnok are planning something big, something that could end this war, if we let them." Sarah leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What are you talking about?" The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and almost guaranteed failure. But he reminded himself of why they were fighting. Not just for survival, but for the future. Humanity had faced countless challenges throughout history, and somehow, it had always endured. This time would be no different. The mission to infiltrate the Zarnok flagship was as dangerous as it sounded. Jack, Sarah, and Marcus knew they were walking into a death trap, but they had no other choice. The librarian's intel was clear. If the orbital cannon was activated, Earth would be reduced to ash. Humanity's survival depended on their success. For Jack, there was an added motivation: finding Emma. If she was still alive, he hoped this mission might lead him closer to her. Preparations began immediately. The librarian provided them with advanced gear scavenged from previous battles against the Zarnok. Each piece of equipment was carefully chosen for its ability to withstand alien technology. They received EMP-resistant suits, modified weapons, capable of piercing Zarnok exoskeletons, and small devices designed to disrupt the aliens' communication systems temporarily. Marcus also gave them detailed maps of the flagship's interior, pieced together from intercepted transmissions and data stolen by rebel spies. "This isn't going to be easy," Marcus warned as he reviewed the plans one last time. "The flagship is crawling with Zarnok. Even with these gadgets, you'll need to move fast and stay quiet." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "We've done impossible things before. We'll do it again." Jack didn't say much. He focused on checking his gear, ensuring every weapon was loaded and every tool was secure. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. He tried not to dwell on the risks. It was easier to focus on the task at hand than to think about the possibility of failure. The journey to the flagship began under the cover of darkness. A stolen Zarnok transport ship, modified by the Resistance, carried them through the atmosphere and into orbit. The craft was crude compared to the sleek vessels of the invaders, but it got the job done. As they approached the massive flagship, Jack stared out the window in awe. The ship loomed like a mountain, its jagged edges glinting ominously in the light of the distant sun. It was a fortress floating in space, bristling with weapons and guarded by swarms of drones. "Here goes nothing," Sarah muttered, as the transport docked with the flagship. The trio donned their suits and stepped cautiously into the airlock. Their hearts pounded as the door hissed open, revealing the dimly lit corridors of the alien vessel. The air smelled metallic, sharp and unnatural. Every step echoed loudly, making them flinch at the slightest sound. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows and avoiding patrols. The maps Marcus had given them proved invaluable, guiding them through the labyrinthine halls toward the control node. Along the way, they encountered smaller Zarnok drones, which they dispatched silently using the prototype weapons Rachel had developed. The devices worked flawlessly, disrupting the aliens' energy shields and leaving them vulnerable to attack. Still, each encounter left them breathless, knowing that discovery meant certain death. As they neared their destination, the tension grew unbearable. Jack could feel sweat trickling down his back, despite the coolness of his suit. His hands trembled, slightly as he gripped his weapon, but he forced himself to stay focused. They reached a large chamber where the control node was housed, a pulsating mass of machinery surrounded by glowing conduits. It looked alien and incomprehensible, yet somehow fragile. "This is it," Sarah whispered, scanning the room for threats. "We disable this and we stop the cannon." Marcus knelt beside the node, pulling out a device designed to hack into the system. "Give me a minute," he said, his fingers flying over the controls. "I'll try to shut it down remotely." Jack kept watch, his eyes darting between the entrances to the chamber. Suddenly a low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. "We've got company," he hissed, raising his weapon. A squad of Zarnok warriors burst into the room, their claws gleaming menacingly. Sarah reacted instantly, firing her weapon and taking down two of them before they could react. Jack joined, and aiming carefully to conserve ammunition. The battle was chaotic, the clanging of metal and bursts of energy lighting up the chamber. Despite being outnumbered, the trio fought with everything they had, driven by desperation. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Marcus shouted, "Got it!" The control node flickered and then went dark, plunging the room into silence. The remaining Zarnok froze, confused by the sudden loss of power. Seizing the opportunity, Jack and Sarah finished them off, their movements precise and efficient. "We did it," Jack panted, lowering his weapon. But his relief was short-lived. An alarm blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing ominously. "Reinforcements were on the way. We need to get out of here, now," Sarah ordered, already heading for the exit. Jack grabbed Marcus, who was struggling to stand after hours of intense concentration. Together they retraced their steps, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding detection. Their escape route led them to an emergency docking bay where a lone escape pod awaited. Jack hesitated, looking back at the corridor they had just fled. "What about Emma?" he asked, his voice cracking. "If she's here, I can't leave without her." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "Jack, we've done all we can. Staying any longer will get us killed and undo everything we've accomplished. Trust me, if she's alive, she'll find a way to survive, just like you always have." Tears welled up in Jack's eyes, but he nodded. There was truth in Sarah's words. He climbed into the pod alongside Sarah and Marcus, sealing the hatch behind them. With a jolt, the pod launched itself away from the flagship, hurtling back toward Earth. Back on the planet's surface, the Resistance celebrated the destruction of the orbital cannon. News of the flagship's partial shutdown spread quickly, inspiring hope among survivors. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity dared to dream of victory. Dr. Rachel Morgan and Brian Carter continued refining their technology, producing more weapons and countermeasures to aid the fight. Caliph, however, was furious. The failure of his superweapon was unacceptable, and he vowed to crush humanity once and for all. Under his command, the Zarnok intensified their ground assaults, determined to exterminate the remaining pockets of resistance. Cities burned brighter than ever, and the skies rained fire. But humanity refused to yield. Resistance cells coordinated their efforts, sharing resources and intelligence thanks to the Librarians' network. Guerrilla tactics became even more effective, targeting key Zarnok assets and forcing the invaders to spread thin. Jack and Sarah returned to the warehouse, battered but alive, ready to lead their team into the next phase of the war. One night, as Jack sat alone in the corner of the warehouse, he noticed something unusual, a scrap of paper tucked into his pack. He unfolded it carefully, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the handwriting. It was a note from Emma. "I'm okay," it read. "Stay strong. We'll see each other again soon." Jack clutched the note tightly, tears streaming down his face. Emma was alive, and if she was still fighting, so would he. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together, with courage, determination, and an unbreakable will to survive. The note from Emma gave Jack a renewed sense of purpose. It was short and simple, but it carried a weight that lifted his spirits in ways he hadn't expected. Knowing she was alive, and still fighting, made the endless battles feel less hopeless. He tucked the note into his pocket close to his heart and resolved to keep pushing forward. If Emma could survive, so could everyone else. The resistance had grown stronger since the destruction of the orbital cannon. Word of their success spread across the globe, inspiring other survivors to join the fight. Small groups of rebels banded together, forming networks that stretched from ruined cities to hidden bunkers deep in the wilderness. The librarian's influence played a key role in this unification, providing critical intel and coordinating joint operations against the Zarnok. For the first time, humanity began to act not as scattered individuals but as a united force. Jack and Sarah became central figures in this growing movement. Their bravery during the flagship mission earned them respect and trust among the fighters. People looked to them for leadership, seeking guidance on how to strike back at the invaders. Jack wasn't used to being seen as a hero. He was just a mechanic who wanted to protect his sister. But he embraced the responsibility. If others believed in him, then he would do everything in his power to live up to their expectations. Despite the progress, the war was far from over. Kalith, enraged by the failure of his superweapon, unleashed a new wave of terror upon Earth. The Zarnok deployed massive ground forces, flooding cities with drones and heavily armored units. Entire neighborhoods were razed to the ground, and anyone caught outside was either killed or captured. The invaders showed no mercy, their glowing green eyes scanning for any sign of life. To counter this escalation, the resistance adapted once again. Dr. Rachel Morgan and Brian Carter worked around the clock to improve their technology. They developed portable EMP devices small enough to carry but powerful enough to disable entire squads of Zarnok drones. These gadgets were distributed to resistance cells worldwide, giving humans a crucial edge in battle. The weapons weren't perfect. They required careful timing and precise targeting, but they turned the tide in many skirmishes. Jack and Sarah led several missions using these new tools. One particularly daring operation involved infiltrating a Zarnok supply depot located beneath a collapsed skyscraper. The team used EMP grenades to neutralize the guards before setting explosives throughout the facility. As they made their escape, the depot erupted in a fiery explosion, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. The loss of supplies dealt a significant blow to the Zarnok's operations in the region. But victories like these came at a cost. Casualties mounted, and the constant fighting took its toll on everyone involved. Some survivors grew weary, questioning whether the resistance could truly win. "They're too strong," one man muttered during a meeting at the warehouse. "No matter how many we kill, there are always more." Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm despite the weariness etched into her face. "We're not fighting to win every battle," she said. "We're fighting to survive. Every drone we destroy, every convoy we ambush, it slows them down. And if we can slow them down long enough, we might find a way to end this." Her words resonated with the group, reigniting their determination. Jack added his own thoughts, speaking quietly but with conviction. "I lost my sister once, or so I thought. But now I know she's out there fighting just like us. If she hasn't given up, neither can we." As the resistance grew bolder, so did the risks they took. One evening, Jack received a message from Marcus, who had returned to the librarian's network. The note contained coordinates and a single sentence. "This is where you'll find answers." Jack didn't need to ask what kind of answers Marcus meant. He knew it was about Emma. With Sarah by his side, Jack set out on another dangerous journey. The coordinates led them to an abandoned underground facility, its entrance hidden beneath layers of rubble and overgrown vegetation. Inside, they discovered evidence of a secret rebel base, one that had been overrun by the Zarnok months earlier. The walls were scorched, and the air smelled of burnt metal and decay. But amidst the destruction, they found something unexpected: a journal belonging to someone named EM. Jack flipped through the pages, his hands trembling. The entries were written in Emma's handwriting, detailing her experiences after the initial invasion. She described escaping the library during the bombardment, joining a group of survivors, and eventually linking up with the librarian's network. Her final entry mentioned being captured by the Zarnok while trying to sabotage a nearby outpost. "If anyone finds this," she wrote, "tell Jack I'm sorry. I tried my best. Tears blurred Jack's vision as he closed the journal. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. "She's alive," Jack whispered, clutching the book tightly. "She has to be." Determined to rescue her, Jack and Sarah followed the trail of clues left behind in the journal. It led them to a heavily fortified Zarnok prison camp located on the outskirts of the city. The facility was surrounded by high walls topped with razor wire, patrolled by drones and armed guards. Breaking in would be nearly impossible, but not entirely out of reach. Using their combined skills, they devised a plan. Jack modified a stolen Zarnok transport vehicle, disguising it as part of a routine supply convoy. Sarah coordinated a diversionary attack on a nearby outpost, drawing attention away from the prison camp. As chaos erupted elsewhere, Jack drove the disguised vehicle straight through the gates, blending in seamlessly with the flow of traffic. Once inside, they split up. Jack headed for the detention block, searching for any sign of Emma. The corridors were eerily quiet, lit only by flickering fluorescent lights. His footsteps echoed loudly, making him flinch at every sound. Finally, he reached a row of cells and began checking each one. Most were empty, but in the last cell he found her. Emma was thinner than he remembered, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Jack?" she croaked, her voice barely audible. "Is that really you?" "It's me," he replied, unlocking the cell door and pulling her into a tight embrace. "I'm getting you out of here." Outside, Sarah's diversion had succeeded in drawing most of the guards away, but reinforcements were already en route. Jack and Emma hurried back to the vehicle, dodging patrols and avoiding detection. When they reached the exit, Sarah was waiting, firing bursts of energy from her weapon to cover their retreat. Together they sped away from the prison camp, leaving the Zarnok scrambling in their wake. Back at the warehouse, the reunion between Jack and Emma brought a rare moment of joy to the resistance. Survivors gathered around, sharing stories and laughter as they celebrated the successful rescue. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of hope in the air, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity could prevail. But the celebration was short-lived. Calith, furious at the continued defiance of his enemies, launched a devastating counterattack. Waves of Zarnok warriors descended upon the city, determined to crush the resistance once and for all. The warehouse came under siege, forcing the survivors to fight tooth and nail to defend their home. Jack, Sarah, and Emma stood side by side, leading the charge. Armed with EMP weapons and sheer determination, they held their ground against overwhelming odds. The battle raged for hours, the sounds of explosions and gunfire echoing through the ruins. Just when it seemed like all was lost, reinforcements arrived, other resistance cells answering the call to arms. Together they pushed the Zarnok back, turning what should have been a massacre into a hard-fought victory. As the dust settled, Jack looked around at the battered but unbroken faces of his comrades. They had faced death countless times and emerged stronger each time. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back, with courage, ingenuity, and an unshakable will to endure. Calith may have been the leader of the galaxy's most lethal species, but he had underestimated one thing: the resilience of humankind, and that mistake would cost him dearly. The resistance had reached a turning point. After months of relentless fighting, humanity's defiance had grown into something greater, a movement that refused to be extinguished. The Zarnok, despite their overwhelming power, were beginning to falter. Their resources were stretched thin, their strategies disrupted by the constant harassment of human fighters. And though the invaders still held the upper hand, cracks were starting to show in their once unbreakable armor. Jack, Sarah, and Emma worked closely together, leading missions and coordinating efforts with other resistance cells. The bond between the siblings had been rekindled, and Emma quickly proved herself as resourceful and determined as Jack. Her time in captivity had hardened her, but it had also given her insight into the Zarnok's operations, knowledge that became invaluable to the resistance. She shared details about their communication systems, patrol patterns, and even weaknesses in their command structure. Meanwhile, Dr. Rachel Morgan and Brian Carter continued to push the boundaries of human ingenuity. They developed new weapons, stronger defenses, and tools that allowed humans to counteract Zarnok technology more effectively. One breakthrough came in the form of a prototype device capable of hacking into the aliens' hive mind. If deployed correctly, it could sow confusion among the Zarnok ranks, making them vulnerable to attack. The implications were enormous, but deploying such a weapon would require getting dangerously close to Kalith himself, the heart of the Zarnok collective consciousness. Kalith was losing patience. For centuries, he had led his kind to victory, after victory conquering planets without significant resistance. But Earth was different. The humans were unlike any species he had encountered before, fragile yet fiercely resilient, unorganized yet capable of remarkable coordination. Every time he thought he had crushed them, they rose again, striking back with renewed ferocity. It infuriated him, not just because of their persistence but because of what it represented, a challenge to his supremacy. He summoned his top commanders to the flagship's command center, his glowing eyes blazing with anger. "This planet has become a stain on our legacy," he declared, his voice cold and metallic. "We will end this rebellion now. No more delays, no more mercy." His plan was simple but devastating. Unleash the full might of the Zarnok fleet upon Earth's remaining cities. Orbital bombardments would reduce entire regions to ash, forcing the humans to either surrender or die. To ensure success, Kalith would personally oversee the operation from the flagship, directing every aspect of the assault. But unknown to him, his decision played perfectly into the Resistance's hands. The Librarians' network intercepted, the plans relaying them to Jack and Sarah. With Kalith aboard the flagship, it presented an opportunity too good to pass up. If they could infiltrate the ship one final time and deploy Rachel's prototype device, they might cripple the Zarnok's hive mind and break their empire forever. The mission was called Operation Hive Fall. It required precision, stealth, and absolute bravery. Jack, Sarah, and Emma volunteered immediately, knowing the risks involved. Marcus joined them as well, offering his expertise in navigating the flagship's labyrinthine corridors. Together, they formed a small strike team tasked with planting the hacking device at the heart of the Zarnok command center. Preparations were intense. The Resistance pooled all available resources to equip the team with everything they needed: EMP-resistant suits, modified weapons, and advanced cloaking devices scavenged from captured Zarnok tech. Rachel and Brian spent sleepless nights refining the hacking device, ensuring it could withstand the flagship's defenses long enough to complete its task. On the eve of the mission, Jack gathered the team for a final briefing. "This is it," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "If we succeed, we can turn the tide of this war. If we fail..." He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone already knew the stakes. Sarah nodded, her expression resolute. "We've beaten impossible odds before. We'll do it again." Emma added quietly, "For everyone who's counting on us." With that, they boarded the transport ship and launched themselves toward the flagship. The journey was tense, each moment bringing them closer to certain danger. As they approached the massive vessel, Jack couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and determination. This wasn't just another mission, it was humanity's last stand. Infiltrating the flagship was even harder than before. Security had been tightened, and patrols moved relentlessly through the corridors. The team relied on their cloaking devices to stay hidden, moving silently and avoiding detection. At one point, they narrowly avoided a squad of elite Zarnok warriors by slipping into a maintenance tunnel. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified in their ears. Finally, they reached the command center. Kalith stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth under siege. His glowing green eyes scanned, the projections, his claws twitching impatiently. The team exchanged glances, signaling their readiness. Jack gave the signal and Marcus activated the hacking device, placing it carefully near the central console. The effect was immediate. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the Zarnok froze in place as the device disrupted their hive mind. Chaos erupted throughout the ship, drones malfunctioning and guards stumbling around in confusion. Calith roared in fury, his connection to the collective consciousness wavering. "Now!" Sarah shouted, and the team sprang into action. Weapons drawn, they opened fire on the disoriented Zarnok, taking down guards and clearing a path to Calith. The alien leader turned to face them, his claws gleaming menacingly. "You dare challenge me?" he snarled, lunging forward with terrifying speed. Jack stepped forward, gripping the pulse lance, a weapon crafted from salvaged Zarnok tech. The two clashed in a brutal fight, Calith's strength matched only by Jack's determination. Claws scraped against metal, sparks flying as they traded blows. Emma and Sarah provided cover, firing at nearby Zarnok warriors while Marcus worked to stabilize the hacking device. With a final surge of effort, Jack drove the pulse lance into Calith's chest, piercing the glowing core within his exoskeleton. The alien leader let out a deafening screech before collapsing, his body convulsing as the hive mind shattered completely. Without their leader, the Zarnok descended into disarray, their collective intelligence unraveling. Back on Earth, the effects of the mission rippled outward. The Zarnok fleet withdrew, abandoning their assault as chaos consumed their ranks. Survivors emerged from hiding, staring up at the skies in disbelief. For the first time in months, there was silence. Not the oppressive quiet of fear, but the calm of liberation. The resistance celebrated cautiously, knowing the war wasn't entirely over. Some Zarnok forces remained, scattered and leaderless, but they posed little threat compared to the organized invasion that had nearly destroyed humanity. Slowly, rebuilding began. Cities were cleared of debris, farms replanted, and communities rebuilt. Hope returned, fragile but enduring. Jack and Emma reunited with old friends, sharing stories of survival and loss. Sarah stayed active, helping organize efforts to restore order and prepare for future threats. Rachel and Brian continued their work, pushing humanity's technological boundaries further than ever before. Word of Earth's triumph spread across the galaxy, sending shockwaves through alien civilizations. The Zarnok, once feared as the galaxy's most lethal species, had been defeated by a race they had underestimated. Humanity earned a new reputation, not as victims, but as warriors willing to fight for their home. As Jack looked out over the ruins of Chicago, now slowly coming back to life, he felt a sense of pride. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious, not because they were stronger or faster, but because they refused to give up. The scars of war would take generations to heal, but the spirit of resilience burned brighter than ever. And somewhere deep in the stars, other species watched and wondered, what else could humans achieve?